Yeah, hello students. So in this we are going to recall the FMG questions which were asked in this exam. So let's start with the first question. Drug used in pregnancy induced hypertension. So as I always say कि pregnancy induced hypertension very important topic. In pregnancy induced hypertension, what is the first drug? The first drug we use is the labetalol. The first drug we use is the labetalol. The second important drug is methyl dopa. The second important drug is methyl dopa. So these two drugs are important mainly. Definitely we can use the other drugs also. There are many drugs which are successful. But in pregnancy induced hypertension, these are the two main drugs. Out of these, the first line drug or the drug of choice is labetalol. But you can see in the options labetalol is not given. The second best option is methyl dopa. So out of this, alpha methyl dopamine. So this is the best answer. Now let's talk about the other options. Now see, hydralazine can be used in emergency. It is safe during pregnancy, but it is not the drug for pregnancy induced hypertension. It is not the first choice drug. Hydralazine is basically used for emergency cases in pregnancy. It can be used, but again it is not a choice of drug. If they are asking the pregnancy induced hypertension, drug of choice is always labetalol. Whether it is pregnancy induced hypertension they ask, or they ask the emergency hypertension during pregnancy, then also labetalol, because this labetalol is available in the oral as well as parenteral. So it is available in the oral as well as parenteral both. So that's why it can be used for emergency cases also. Methyl dopa is the oral drug, can be used for PIH. So in chronic hypertension in pregnancy, we are using the alpha methyl dopa. So this is the important drug. Lisinopril, guys. Lisinopril is the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, and it is never used in pregnancy. It is not safe in the pregnancy because it can cause the pulmonary and renal agenesis. So it is not safe. Atenolol, again not safe. It inhibits the growth. It's a beta blocker. Even though it's a beta blocker, not all the beta blockers are safe. So atenolol is not safe because it is inhibiting the growth of the fetus. So out of these guys, these two drugs can be used, but out of these the best drug for this is alpha methyl dopamine. So that is the methyl dopa. What is the main side effect of methyl dopa? The main side effect of methyl dopa, it can cause the hemolysis. So hemolytic anemia. Hemolytic anemia can be caused. Coombs positive hemolytic anemia. Now let's discuss the next question. 55-year male on an antihypertensive drug developed cough. I always say these antihypertensive drugs are very important. So you can see this is the second question from the antihypertensive. Which antihypertensive drug is responsible for having cough? So definitely the language is not the same because it is the recall based, but this type of question was there, right? So don't go with the language, but try to understand कि most of these are clinical questions and the language could be different. So for that you have to understand कि what exactly they want to ask. In this antihypertensive drug responsible for cough, so lisinopril, that is angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor. Labetalol is a beta blocker. Amlodipine is a calcium channel blocker, and losartan is the angiotensin receptor blocker. So as you know, out of these drugs, lisinopril, which is the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, can cause the cough. Why it is causing the cough? So it is causing the cough because these drugs increase the bradykinin level. How they increase the bradykinin level? Because they inhibit the bradykinin metabolism. They inhibit the bradykinin metabolism by inhibiting the angiotensin converting enzyme. They can inhibit the metabolism of bradykinin or substance P. So that's why they can increase the bradykinin substance P level. So out of these, the drug responsible for cough is lisinopril. So it is the captopril lisinopril group of drug. So rash, angioedema, these are the important side effect. Cough, dry cough. This cough is dry. So dry cough, rash, angioedema. These are the main problems seen with the ACE inhibitors. So the answer is lisinopril. In one more thing is, suppose the patient is having the cough due to this drug, then we can switch the patient to losartan. So you can switch the patient to losartan. So you can start losartan. ARBs can be given, they are safe. Same effect and no cough, because ARBs are directly acting on the receptors. So this is the second important. Then guys, a person with malaria, a person having malaria with travel recent history from Assam to Delhi. It means having the history that he has traveled to Assam, northeast. Assam means northeast. Which drug will be used for the treatment? So as you know, in the northeast, one thing is, if the person is traveling to northeast, in the northeast there is more resistance. So definitely there is chloroquine resistance. These are the chloroquine resistant area. So in the chloroquine resistant area, what we are using? We are using the ACT. These drugs we are using artesunate or artemether combination therapies. So out of these, chloroquine, you can see resistant. The first, chloroquine resistant. Now definitely the rest of the drug, quinine and artesunate, can be used, but as you know, artesunate derivatives or artemisinin derivatives are used for chloroquine resistant malaria mainly. So in this case, it is the artesunate which is used. Now remember, artesunate alone is not successful. In the ACT, we are having the two. One is artesunate plus the second is sulfadoxypyrimethamine, or we can use the artemether plus lumefantrine. Artemether plus lumefantrine. These two combinations are mainly used, but there are many other combinations which are used. So guys, in this case, ideally even the sulfadoxypyrimethamine is resistant in the northeast. So you can use the artemether plus lumefantrine combination. Right? This is very good. This combination is very good for this northeast region. But yes, we have to give the artemisinin. Artesunate is not resistant, and artesunate is used in all the areas. So most of the time what happens in options in this question, you will see that they are asking the severe malaria. So mostly the patient is presenting with the severe, and artesunate is one of the best fast acting drug. So artesunate or artemether like drugs, they are the best drug for nowadays for the chloroquine resistant malaria. Then guys, next, a patient having COPD. The patient is suffering of COPD, taking salmeterol, but no improvement. Which drug would be added to improve the condition? Now exactly I don't know what were the options, but guys, if you are having COPD and salmeterol is not the first choice drug. If COPD, then in COPD the best bronchodilator is LAMA, long-acting muscarinic antagonist. Long-acting muscarinic antagonist, and for that the best drug is tiotropium. The second is asthma. In asthma, the best drug is this beta-2 agonist. So in this we have the SABA and LABA. So for acute purpose we use the SABA, short acting like salbutamol, and for chronic means persistent asthma we can use the LABA. Now in this case it's a COPD, and in COPD anticholinergics, long acting muscarinic antagonist, anticholinergics are the preferred. So one option was definitely tiotropium. So it is one of the LAMA, and it is the preferred drug in the COPD patient. So whenever they are asking the best bronchodilator, in asthma it is beta-2 agonist. In COPD it is muscarinic antagonist, or you can say the anticholinergic. Repeatedly asked, a farmer took unknown poison, presented with the excessive sweating, low BP, these type of symptoms were given. So definitely again it's a case of organophosphate poisoning. Which drug will be given for treating this condition? So it is one of the frequently asked. So as you know, in the OP poisoning, the best antidote is atropine. The second important drugs we are using the oximes. Oximes are enzyme reactivators. In this we use the PAM-DAM. So these are enzyme reactivator. They can reactivate the cholinesterase enzyme. But overall best antidote is atropine, that is the muscarinic antagonist, anticholinergic drug, can control all these cholinergic symptoms because organophosphates are cholinergics. So atropine is the drug of choice, and it can control all these symptoms. You should repeat the atropine till the sign of atropinization appear. Repeat till the sign of atropinization appear. What is the earliest sign of atropinization? That is the mucosal dryness. So there will be dryness of the mucosa, like airway mucosa, oral mucosa, mucosal dryness, that is the earliest symptom. Commonly, in practically, you can see the pupil, but that is not the earliest. The earliest is mucosal dryness. So in this case, neostigmine, it is the cholinergic drug. Physostigmine, cholinergic. Edrophonium, cholinergic. Atropine is the anticholinergic drug. So in this case, atropine is the best drug. Resistance. Again, I told you the resistance nowadays very important. Antimicrobial resistance, one of the biggest hit topic. So resistance to rifampicin, against rifampicin, isoniazid, kanamycin and ciprofloxacin. So you can see it is resistance against isoniazid plus rifampicin plus one of the aminoglycoside plus one fluoroquinolone. So 4 drug resistance. There is 4 drug resistance, and out of these 2 first line drug H plus R and 2 second line drug aminoglycoside and fluoroquinolone. In MDR-TB, we have the H plus R resistance, H plus R. In rifampicin resistance, only rifampicin resistance. Extremely resistant tuberculosis, this is XDR-TB, and in this we have the H plus R plus aminoglycoside and fluoroquinolone. Exclusive resistance, that is, there is no term like this. So guys, this is very important, resistance against anti-tubercular drug. बार बार मैं आपको बोलता हूँ, resistance is very important, right? This especially the MDR, XDR-TB. So exclusively on rifampicin is possible, but not exclusive resistance TB is nothing. So MDR-TB, rifampicin resistance TB, extremely resistant tuberculosis, yes, XDR. So this is a case of XDR. As you know, mortality rate is very high. In rifampicin resistance, only rifampicin. MDR, H plus R. A patient taking platinum based chemotherapy. So platinum compounds, you know, the highly toxic anti-cancer platinum compound. Drug used to prevent the nausea vomiting. So you know these drugs are causing nausea vomiting. These drugs are causing nephrotoxicity. These drugs are causing ototoxicity. Right? These are very common. Rest of the general side effects will be there, like bone marrow suppression, alopecia, mucositis, secondary leukemia. These risks are associated with all the anti-cancer, but in these, nausea vomiting is very high, nephrotoxicity risk is high, ototoxicity, irreversible hearing loss. So all these are very high with platinum compounds. So it is platinum based. Cisplatin, carboplatin, oxaliplatin, these are the platinum based chemotherapy. They are commonly used drug also, but they are highly toxic. So now if they are having the nausea and vomiting, if the patient is having the nausea vomiting, what are the drugs? So in the chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting, there are 2 types of patients. One is early vomiting, early onset and late onset. In the early onset, the best drug is 5-HT3 blockers, cetrons. 5-HT3 blocker is best, cetron is best. In the late onset, neurokinin receptor, NK1, neurokinin, these are pitants, aprepitant like drug, pitant. So these are the drugs we are using. Mainly, we can use the steroids. In the other drugs, we have the corticosteroids, we have the metoclopramide, and some cannabinoid receptor acting drugs like Nabilone, Dronabinol. All these drugs we are using. So out of these, you can see domperidone, no. Palanicetron, it is the 5-HT3 blocker, and definitely it is one of the best drug. Diphenhydramine is antihistaminic. Promethazine is antihistaminic. So these 2 are antihistaminic drugs, H1 blockers. Domperidone is D2 blocker. So out of these, palanicetron is the drug of choice for chemotherapy induced vomiting. So very important topic again, general side effects of anti-cancers, especially these platinum compounds, very important. Next question. A patient presented with head trauma, repeatedly asked, and increased intracranial pressure. Which of the following agent will be used for the treatment? So always remember guys, if the patient presenting with the increased ICP, increased intracranial pressure, if they have not written that the patient is having the brain hemorrhage, always remember the mannitol is the drug of choice. Mannitol is the osmotic diuretic. It can increase the intravascular volume due to osmosis. You give the IV injection, IV mannitol is given. If you give the IV mannitol, it attracts the water in the intravascular compartment. From where this water is coming? This water is coming from the interstitial region. So it can decrease the interstitial edema or it can decrease the cerebral edema. But the only thing you need to say is the only thing which is important is the contraindication. If the patient is having brain hemorrhage, then don't use. Why? Because if the patient is having brain hemorrhage, it can increase the risk of bleeding. So that's why, because increase the intravascular volume, so more risk of bleeding will be there. So then we cannot use. So guys, in this case, the drug of choice for this intracranial pressure is mannitol. Acetazolamide can be used, but not a choice of drug. Furosemide, thiazides, these are the other diuretics, but they are not the choice of drug in this case. So the answer is mannitol. A child was noticed to have the spell of fast blinks and staring at something for 30 seconds. So child having this fixed gaze, right, for 30 seconds. Which of the following drug is the treatment? So it is a typical case of absence seizures. It's a typical case of absence seizure. Now, which of the following drug is responsible for treatment in this condition? In absence seizure, we have the two type of patient. One is typical absence seizure, like this, and the second is atypical. Overall, best for typical, nowadays we have one safer option, that is ethosuximide. Ethosuximide. In atypical absence seizure, we can use the valproate. So mainly we are using these two drugs, ethosuximide and valproate. Ethosuximide is the calcium channel blocker, valproate broad spectrum. So in this case, phenytoin, no, it is not for absence seizure, because in absence seizure we need the calcium channel blocker. Valproate, it can be used. Carbamazepine, not used. Lamotrigine, not used. So out of these, valproate is the only drug which can be used in the absence seizure. Even though it is not very safe, if less than 2-year child, then we cannot use the valproate. The reason is very simple, it can cause the hepatotoxicity. So in less than 2-year child, there is high risk of hepatotoxicity. In this case, the age is not given, as well as the ethosuximide is not in the choice. So valproate is the only choice we have. So that will be the most correct answer. Then guys, very frequently asked, a female with WIP test positive, white discharge with clue cells positive. So everything is given. Diagnosis of bacterial vaginosis. So what is the drug of choice for bacterial vaginosis? The drug of choice for bacterial vaginosis is metronidazole. Metronidazole is the drug of choice, and it is given via vaginal route. So vaginal pastry of metronidazole can be kept in the vagina or can be inserted in the vagina, and that is the best treatment. So metronidazole is the drug of choice even during pregnancy. If there is B vaginosis, you can use the metronidazole pastries. If suppose ki metronidazole is not given in the choice, then the second option we have is the clindamycin. So doxycycline is not for B vaginosis. This is the anaerobic infection. Erythromycin, amoxicillin, they are not for this. So metronidazole is the best drug, or it is the drug of choice for this case. Very important. Clue cells are given, white discharge, right? Everything is given. So that is a typical infection, B vaginosis. Next is, which of the following drug, which of the given drug is used as IV hypnotics? So intravenous as well as the hypnotic, or you can say the anesthetic. So guys, out of these, let's see one by one. Propofol IV, yes. Sodium thiopentone, yes. Etomidate, yes. All these are intravenous. And propofol is one of the best. Propofol is the drug of choice because it is the best. Halothane, sevoflurane, and desflurane. So guys, these are inhalational. Sufentanil is not the hypnotic. Sufentanil is basically the opioid. It is mainly analgesic drug. It is the most potent opioid. It is the analgesic drug. Succinylcholine, etracurium, these are muscle relaxant. So out of these, in hypnotic we have the option A and B, and IV is propofol, thiopentone, etomidate like drugs. These are intravenous hypnotic. So that is direct question from the classification. So those who says ki nowadays classification nahi aata, you can see, right? So basically we should know the basic part as well as we should know the clinical integration. दोनों चीज important है. Drug of choice for mountain sickness. Now whether direct question or indirect question means clinical question. Mountain sickness asked, and it is one of the frequently asked question, I would say. In the mountain sickness, I think everybody is aware. Acetazolamide, that is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, and that is the drug of choice for acute mountain sickness or mountain sickness. Hyoscine or scopolamine, that is the drug of choice for motion sickness. Transdermal patch can be applied, so it is the drug of choice for motion sickness patch. Transdermal patch behind the ear pinna. Doxylamine, that is antihistaminic, and that is drug of choice for morning sickness. That is drug of choice for morning sickness, antihistaminic drug. Furosemide is not the drug for this type of vomiting, so it is the acetazolamide which is the drug of choice for mountain sickness. A lady gave birth to a child born with neural tube defects. So guys, neural tube defect like spina bifida, very commonly seen with the valproate, or you can say the anti-epileptics. Now she is again pregnant. So there is history of neural tube defect and now she is again pregnant. What should be the dose of folic acid recommended to her? Now see, very important question. So what the guideline says, normally 400 microgram daily dose is required. Suppose a female, young female, fertile age, you start daily dose of 400 microgram. Whenever she will be pregnant, there is a chance that she will not have the neural tube defect if you are giving the folic acid supplementation. So this is the daily dose of folic acid in the fertile age, fertile period. But if already there is history of neural tube defect, then this is the high risk case. So in these type of cases, 4000 microgram daily dose of folic acid. So this is as per the guidelines, CDC guidelines, Center for Disease Control, America. So as per these guidelines, so for high risk patient like this, we need the 4000. So normally this is the recommended dose, but in high risk, this is the recommended dose. So now you can see 4000 microgram. Now the options are in milligram. So definitely it is the 4 milligram, which is the recommended. So if there is no history of neural tube defect, then 0.4 milligram. But in this case, it is the 4 milligram or 4000 microgram of folic acid daily dose is given. Especially, it should be started at least 1 month before. It should be started at least 1 month before and 1 month before, and it should be continued for the first trimester. So start 1 month before and should be continued for the first trimester. So first trimester it will be continued, means first 3 months. So this is the recommended for folic acid. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, I already told you what is the side effect. So dry cough is the common side effect. Tachycardia is not seen with this, that is the side effect of nifedipine, calcium channel blocker, antihypertensive, calcium channel blocker. Vasodilator, reflex tachycardia due to vasodilation. Hypokalemia, that is not because of this, that is seen with the diuretics, loop diuretics and thiazides. Polyuria, that is again due to diuretics. So out of this, dry cough is the side effect of ACE inhibitor that we know very well. I told you headache frequently asked, gout frequently asked. You can see all of the following sentences are true except regarding the gout treatment. Naproxen is the drug of choice for acute gout. Absolutely true. Naproxen is the drug of choice for gout. Absolutely true. In the acute gout, we start with the NSAIDs. Either naproxen or indomethacin. One important drug is indomethacin. Indomethacin, that is very potent drug. So naproxen, indomethacin, diclofenac, these type of drugs can be used in acute gout. Colchicine is the drug of choice? No. Colchicine is not the drug of choice for acute gout. Colchicine used in the refractory cases. Why? It is not that colchicine is not very effective. It is very effective. But the problem with colchicine is it is highly toxic. It is highly toxic. That's why it is not the choice of drug. So because of high toxicity, because of high risk of toxicity, it can cause the bone marrow suppression, agranulocytosis. So because of that, it is not a choice of drug. Allopurinol, definitely xanthine oxidase inhibitor, and that is the best drug for chronic gout. So xanthine oxidase inhibitor, it is the best drug for chronic gout. And allopurinol and aspirin both are contraindicated in the acute gout. That is again absolutely true. So option A, C and D, they are true. Why aspirin is contraindicated? Because aspirin inhibits the uric acid excretion. It inhibits the uric acid excretion in the urine, so it is contraindicated. And allopurinol if you give in the acute gout, it can increase the toffee, deposition of toffee in the joints, and it can worsen the pain. So increase the toffee, it can worsen the pain, that's what is contraindicated. So this is about the gout treatment. Very important topic, gout. Next question. Which of the following drug is contraindicated in the heart disease patient? Something related to this was asked. So guys, kanamycin. What is kanamycin, gentamicin? These are aminoglycoside. What is azithromycin, erythromycin? These are macrolides. Now out of these, in heart disease, so definitely if we correlate, aminoglycosides are causing nephrotoxicity, they are causing ototoxicity, they are causing muscular toxicity, neuromuscular blockade. So nephrotoxicity, ototoxicity and neuromuscular blockade, these are seen with the aminoglycoside. In macrolides, especially this azithromycin, even though macrolides are very safe, but azithromycin is having the risk of long QT syndrome. If already there is cardiac disease, heart disease, definitely we should not give the azithromycin. Or if you are giving the azithromycin, then you should do the baseline ECG. I discussed last year that this question is very important. Azithromycin and hydroxychloroquine, they both are having the risk of long QT syndrome. We should avoid this combination. Azithromycin alone is not safe if the patient is having history of this type of arrhythmia. So that we have to be very careful. Next is the drug causing gynecomastia in men and used for the hirsutism in female is. So guys, anti-androgen. Gynecomastia means anti-androgen. So out of these, spironolactone, that is aldosterone antagonist, levodopa, that is drug for Parkinsonism, dopamine precursor, amiloride, that is epithelial potassium, so this is epithelial sodium channel blocker, potassium sparing diuretic, thiazide, that is the diuretic. So out of these, gynecomastia seen with this drug. Why? Because aldosterone antagonist, they can also inhibit the androgen. So because of risk of androgen inhibition, so it is having the anti-androgen effect, and because of anti-androgen, there is risk of gynecomastia due to spironolactone. Now definitely it is anti-androgen, so can be used for hirsutism in the females. If you want to avoid this gynecomastia, one important drug is there. Instead of spironolactone, we can use the eplerenone. So eplerenone is the drug can be used in place of spironolactone in these cases, right? So we should know the drugs causing this gynecomastia: digoxin, isoniazid, spironolactone, ketoconazole, cimetidine, and estrogen like drug. So these drugs are commonly causing this gynecomastia, or they are anti-androgen. So DISCO can be remembered. So these are important. Then guys, what is the mechanism of action of doxycycline? So doxycycline is a tetracycline. And what is the mechanism of tetracycline? It's a protein synthesis inhibitor. So disruption of cell wall synthesis? No. Beta-lactams are causing the cell wall synthesis inhibition. Protein synthesis? Yes, it could be. Protein synthesis? Yes, it could be. Micropore formation? Again, no. So guys, now out of this, micropore is due to amphotericin B, antifungal. Cell membrane. Now protein synthesis, where these tetracyclines bind. So remember, aminoglycosides and tetracyclines, these are binding to 30S. And rest of the protein synthesis inhibitors like chloramphenicol, erythromycin, macrolides, lincosamides, linezolid, streptogramins, all these are binding to 50S. So you can see it binds to 30S and inhibiting the protein synthesis. Basically, it is inhibiting the binding of amino acyl tRNA to a site of mRNA ribosome complex. So it is inhibiting the binding of amino acyl tRNA to mRNA ribosome complex. So this is the doxycycline, or you can say the tetracycline. So we should know the mechanism based classification of antimicrobial agents. Then guys, very important but very good question, which of the following anti-diabetic drug causes hypoglycemia? So I told you in anti-diabetics, the two things are important. One is hypoglycemia and second is weight of the patient. In every drug, we have to see these two. So out of these, Voglibos is alpha glucosidase inhibitor. Alpha glucosidase inhibitor. So just imagine it is inhibiting the digestion and interfering with the absorption of glucose or carbohydrate. So definitely it is not going to cause the hypoglycemia. It can prevent the risk of hyperglycemia, especially the postprandial hyperglycemia. It is not going to cause the hypoglycemia. Pioglitazone, that is PPAR gamma agonist. So again it is not causing hypoglycemia because it acts via decreasing the insulin resistance. So again it is not having the direct risk of hypoglycemia. Glimepiride, it is insulin secretagogues. It is sulfonylurea. And these sulfonylureas are acting via increasing the insulin secretion. Now just imagine if they increase the insulin secretion, they have the high risk of hypoglycemia. So hypoglycemia risk is very high with the sulfonylurea, as well as they cause the weight gain. So both risks are there. So that's why glimepiride like drugs are having the high risk of hypoglycemia. Metformin is big one, right? And definitely decrease the insulin resistance. There is no risk of hypoglycemia. So out of the anti-diabetic, the oral antidiabetics, hypoglycemia risk is seen with the sulfonylureas and meglitinides. And both these drugs are acting via increasing the insulin secretion. So that is the anti-diabetic drug causing the hypoglycemia. So this is all about these recall based questions. So keep studying. My only advice is don't give up. Keep studying. You will definitely succeed. Thank you.